Okay, hello Bio, this is Mr. B, and we should be wrapping up Chapter 1 with this video here. It is Studying Life Part 2. So we talked about what it actually takes to be considered alive in the last video. So we're going to keep moving on in that theme with the rest of this section. And the first part of this section talks about the big ideas in biology. So there's going to be a lot of overlap between these. What these are kind of just some of the main ideas that we focus on in biology class. And again, all biological sciences are tied together by these big ideas that overlap and interlock with one another. And several of these big ideas overlap with the characteristics of life or the nature of science. So that's what I was kind of hinting on, that we have already seen a lot of these before in our previous videos. Again, when we talk about the scientific methodology, and we also talk about, again, those characteristics of life. So there's a lot of overlap when we talk about these big ideas in biology. Oh, there they are. So, again, don't worry about maybe jotting every single one of these down, but maybe just get a couple of these. I would say at least write down 2 or 3 of these. So the study of biology revolves around these big interlocking ideas: the cellular basis of life, which we talked about; information and heredity, which deals with DNA; matter and energy, which again talked about metabolism; growth, development, reproduction, and homeostasis, which again we all talked. Growth, development, and reproduction, which we already talked about; homeostasis, which we already talked about; and evolution as well; structure and function, which again might be a little bit new, but like I said, we're going to hit on all of these this year; unit and diversity of life; interdependence in nature; and science as a way of knowing. So these are big central themes of biology, and again, they did have like a slide for each one of these, but since we're going to hit on them all throughout the course of the year, I thought I'd just introduce them now so you're familiar with them. Again, we don't need to go too in-depth with them yet. So what we're going to do to almost wrap this up, I think we have one more thing, is our different fields of biology. So we have different fields of biology that study a lot of different types of life. So our first one is called global ecology. So hopefully we've heard of this word ecology before. So they describe ecology based off the fact that there's life on Earth is shaped by weather patterns and processes in the atmosphere that we are just beginning to understand. So activities of living organisms, including humans, profoundly affect both the atmosphere and the climate. So global ecology, one of the big focuses on now is something called global warming and the impact that humans are having on the environment. So that's going to be a focus of one of our chapters later on in the year. And again, global ecologist studies are enabling us to learn about our global impact. So again, people are studying the globe, they're saying how humans have been affecting it, and maybe giving us some possible ways to fix our effects. And our example is, again, we can actually look at plants in a forest to actually study the effects of actual air pollution. So I would make sure you have something down about maybe global ecology and global warming or something in that aspect. So our next one is biotechnology. So this is a huge one in today's world. So the field of biotechnology is based on our ability to edit and rewrite the genetic code. So I would make sure I have this first sentence written down here: edit and rewrite our genetic code. So what that means is we may soon be able to learn how to correct or replace damaged genes that cause inherited diseases, or genetically engineer bacteria to clean up toxic waste. So this is these are just 2 very specific examples. This is a huge realm of possible study when it comes to actually editing our genes and our genetic code and making again, a lot of problems go away. However, there's a lot of ethical, legal, and social questions that are raised here. Again, there's a lot of people that think we shouldn't really mess with how things are. And then also, what's going to happen if we, can we really actually clone other living things? Is that right of us to do? So again, this branch has a lot of possibilities, but there's also kind of some negatives that might go along with that as well. So biotechnology, I'd make sure I have something written down about that. So our next kind of field of biology here is that involves building the tree of life. So what this means is that biologists have discovered and identified roughly 1.8 million different living kinds of organisms, and researchers estimate that somewhere between 2 and 100 million more life forms are waiting to be discovered around the globe. So that is huge. So right now we know of about 1.8 million different kinds of living organisms, and we have those into a tree of life. Again, hopefully you've maybe seen that with different branches. If not, we can show you one of those in class. However, researchers are not satisfied with where they're at because they believe there's 2 to 100 million more out there waiting to be discovered. And again, now was a picture here. We'll delete that though right there. So again, that is kind of our step of building the tree of life. And in addition to identifying and cataloging all these life forms, so again, that's a big goal, biologists aim to combine the latest genetic information with computer technology to organize all living things into a single universal tree of all life and put the results on the web in a form that anyone can access. So there's something big going on right now where they're trying to look at the genes of every single living organism, and they're trying to compare how similar those genes are to one another, and they're going to organize how everything is related based off of their similarities in their genes. So that is a huge undertaking going on right now. We are identifying living things, but now we are actually trying to take a look at their genes as well. So that is building the tree of life. Again, that's a big one. So our next one, ecology and evolution of infectious diseases. So the relationship between a host and a pathogen, which are two words we're going to hit later, are dynamic and constantly changing. Organisms that cause human disease have their own ecology, which involves our bodies, medicines we take, and our interactions with each other in the environment. Understanding these interactions is crucial to safeguarding our future. So what that means is a pathogen is anything that can come into our human body and cause us harm is a pathogen. So like a thing like a bacteria, a virus, a fungus, there's some other single-celled organisms. So we have very interesting relationships with them when they come into our body, what they need to live, what our body does to try to fight them off, and the medicines we take, and again, how close in contact we come to one another when we have these things. So we need to understand these interactions to make sure we safeguard our future, kind of understand what's going on in order to prevent a major outbreak of any type of disease. And again, this example, it talks about how someone that studies a group of baboons might look at their all their pathogens and maybe see if there's any possibility that they can evolve to infect humans, because that would be kind of a big problem there. So our next big field, and I think, yes, that is our last one actually, it's called genomics and molecular biology. So this is actually just really similar to biotechnology. It actually just focuses more on studying DNA instead of actually trying to rewrite it. So it looks at DNA contained in a wide range of organisms, and again, it allows us to kind of take a look at maybe how some organisms carry out or deal with certain problems, and maybe how their DNA helps them, and if there's any way we can use that DNA to apply to humans. So those are our major biological fields of study currently, and like I said, we're going to hit on all of those at some point this year. So I would just make sure, again, I have something jotted down about each one of those big headings that we have there. So to finish up, we're actually going to talk about how to perform a biological investigation, and how we do that is we actually use something that is called the metric system. So anytime we collect data and perform experiments, we're going to use the metric system. And the reason why we do this is because, or actually, we'll get there in a second, actually it kind of answers the own question there, but the metric system is a decimal system of measurement whose units are based on certain physical standards and are scaled on multiples of 10. So we do not use the metric system here, but it is actually easier to use the metric system once you get used to it. We're just not used to it, that's why we think it's difficult, because everything is based off of a multiple of 10. So once you get kind of the patterns down, it's really easy to figure out again, how to do easy conversions and things like that. And then the reason why we actually use the metric system is because scientists across the world use some form of the metric system. So if we do an experiment here and a scientist over in Russia wants to repeat our experiments, they can do exact same thing we do because we use a standard unit of measurement, which again, the metric system, kind of between the whole field of science. And here are metric units. We have the meter for length, kilogram for mass, the liter for volume, and temperature is based off of the Celsius scale, not the Fahrenheit scale that we use. And again, I already gave this example because we can repeat each other's work throughout the entire world. And again, safety, we'll just hit on safety more as it comes. So it is important, so just don't basically act crazy in the lab. And again, we'll get to the rest of that. So that's it for Chapter 1. Let me know if you have any questions.